Tom Hanks was in the middle of filming his most challenging scene when his assistant handed him an envelope that had been marked "You are Gent Personal." The moment Tom read the letter inside, he walked off set without explanation, left his co-stars confused, and disappeared for 3 days. What was written in that letter would force Tom to confront the darkest secret from his childhood and change how he saw his entire life. August 15th, 2009. The set of Larry Crown was buzzing with activity as Tom prepared for a particularly emotional scene. He was both starring in and directing the film, juggling multiple responsibilities while trying to maintain the creative vision he'd worked on for months. The pressure was intense, but Tom thrived on complex projects that pushed his limits. Between takes, Tom was reviewing script notes when his longtime assistant, Margaret, approached with a worried expression. She was holding a manila envelope that looked like it had been through several postal systems. "Tom, this came through your agent's office marked urgent. The return address says it's from someone named Eleanor Reyes in Sacramento. She claims she needs to speak with you about something from 1961. Tom looked puzzled. 1961. I was 5 years old. I don't know anyone named Eleanor Reyes. She included a phone number and said it was about your father. Tom, she says she has information about something that happened when you were a child. Something your family never told you." The letter inside would shatter everything Tom thought he knew about his past. Tom opened the envelope with growing curiosity. Inside was a handwritten letter on simple lined paper, written in the careful script of someone elderly. "Dear Mr. Hanks, my name is Eleanor Reyes. I am 84 years old, and I worked as a social worker in Contra Costa County from 1958 to 1985. I have been following your career for many years, and I am so proud of the man you have become. But I have carried a secret about your family for almost 50 years, and I can no longer stay silent. In 1961, when you were 5 years old, there was an incident involving your father that was covered up by the authorities. Your mother made a decision to protect you from the truth, but I believe you deserve to know what really happened. I have documentation that proves your father was not the man your family told you he was. I know this must be confusing and frightening, but Mr. Hanks, there are things about your childhood that explain so much about the sadness I sometimes see in your performances. You were affected by events you were too young to understand. Please call me. I am old and my time is limited. This secret has weighed on my conscience for too long. Sincerely, Eleanor Reyes." Tom felt the world tilt beneath his feet. Tom read the letter 3 times, his hands shaking slightly. His father, Amos Hanks, had always been a distant figure in his life. Tom's parents had divorced when he was young, and his father had drifted in and out of his childhood like a ghost. But what could have happened in 1961 that was so serious? It required a cover-up. "Margaret, clear my schedule for the rest of the day. Actually, clear it for the rest of the week. Tom, you can't just stop filming. We have the entire crew here. The other actors, tell Julia I'm sorry," Tom said, referring to his co-star Julia Roberts. "Tell everyone I have a family emergency. Because I think I do." Tom walked off set without another word, leaving behind a confused cast and crew who had never seen him act so erratically. The phone call that followed changed everything Tom thought he knew about himself. Tom drove to his Malibu home and immediately called the number Eleanor had provided. She answered on the second ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. "Mrs. Reyes, this is Tom Hanks. I got your letter." "Oh, Mr. Hanks, thank you for calling. I wasn't sure you would." Eleanor's voice was frail but clear, carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much in her long career. "Mrs. Reyes, what happened in 1961? What don't I know about my father?" There was a long pause. "Mr. Hanks, this is not a conversation for the telephone. Can you come to Sacramento? I have files, photographs, documents that I kept from that time. Things that were supposed to be destroyed. I can be there tomorrow morning. There's something else you should know before you come. You weren't your father's only victim." Tom felt ice in his veins. "Victim? What do you mean, victim?" "Mr. Hanks, in 1961 your father was investigated for child abuse. Not just neglect or harsh discipline, serious physical abuse that left you hospitalized." Tom's legs gave out. He sank into a chair, the phone trembling in his hand. "Mrs. Reyes, I don't remember being hospitalized when I was 5. That's because your mother told you it was a car accident. She and your father created that story to protect you from the memory and to protect him from prosecution. Tom's mind raced through his childhood memories. He did have vague recollections of being in a hospital, of having bandages, of adults whispering around him. But he'd always been told it was from a car accident when he was riding with his father. What really happened? Come to Sacramento, Mr. Hanks. There are things I need to show you in person. The next morning, Tom drove to Sacramento to face the truth about his past. Eleanor Reyes lived in a modest senior living community. She was a tiny woman, probably less than 5 feet tall, but her eyes were sharp and kind. She invited Tom into her small apartment, where she had laid out several manila folders on her dining table. Mr. Hanks, before I show you these documents, I want you to know that your mother loved you very much. Everything she did was to protect you. Tom nodded, though his throat was too tight to speak. Eleanor opened the first folder. Inside were police reports, hospital records, and social worker notes from 1961. Tom's hands shook as he read his own medical records from when he was 5 years old. The truth was worse than Tom could have imagined. According to the documents, Tom had been brought to the hospital with multiple injuries, a broken arm, severe bruising, and what doctors suspected were cigarette burns. The initial police report stated that Amos Hanks claimed his son had fallen downstairs, but the pattern of injuries didn't match that story. Your father had been drinking heavily, Eleanor explained gently. He lost his temper about something trivial. I think you had spilled juice on some important papers. He beat you with a belt, then threw you against a wall. Tom stared at the medical photographs that documented his 5-year-old body covered in bruises and bandages. He had no memory of this happening. Why don't I remember any of this? Trauma does strange things to a child's memory. Your mind protected you by blocking it out, and your mother reinforced that protection by creating the car accident story. Eleanor showed him more documents. I was assigned to your case. I recommended that you be removed from your father's custody immediately. But then something unusual happened. The cover-up went deeper than Tom had imagined. Your father's brother worked for the district attorney's office. He had connections, influence. Within a week, all charges were dropped. The police reports were buried. Your father agreed to leave town and have no further contact with you. Tom looked up from the documents. That's why he disappeared from my life. Yes, it wasn't abandonment, Mr. Hanks. It was part of a legal agreement. Your mother agreed not to pursue charges if your father stayed away permanently. Tom felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. His father hadn't just been distant or disinterested. He'd been forced to stay away because he was dangerous. Mrs. Reyes, why are you telling me this now? After almost 50 years, Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Because I've watched you your whole career. I've seen you play fathers, seen the tenderness and protection you bring to those roles. You became the father you never had. But I also see the sadness in your performances, the way you seem to be searching for something. Eleanor revealed why she'd kept the secret so long. Your mother made me promise never to tell you while she was alive. She died 3 years ago, and I've been wrestling with my conscience ever since. Tom remembered his mother's death in 2006. She had been his anchor, his source of stability throughout his childhood and career. Learning that she had carried this secret her entire life made him see her sacrifice in a new light. She protected me from the truth for 45 years. She protected you from trauma that could have destroyed your ability to trust, to love, to form relationships. Look at your life, Mr. Hanks. You've been married happily for decades. You're a devoted father. You've brought joy to millions of people. That wouldn't have been possible if you'd grown up knowing what your father did to you. Eleanor showed him one final document, a letter his mother had written to the court in 1961. I would rather my son never know his father than know his father as a man who could hurt a child. I will tell him whatever story I need to tell to keep him safe. Tom spent 3 days processing this information before returning to his life. Tom stayed in a Sacramento hotel for 3 days, walking around the city, thinking about his childhood, his career, and his relationships. Everything made more sense now. His instinctive protectiveness toward children, his ability to portray vulnerable characters, his deep appreciation for family stability. When he finally called Margaret to say he was returning to work, She was relieved but worried. Tom, everyone's been concerned. Julia was ready to drive to Sacramento to find you herself. Tell everyone I'm okay. Better than okay. Tell them I'm ready to work. Tom returned to filming with a new understanding of himself. When Tom walked back onto the Larry Crowne set, he was clearly different. The cast and crew noticed a new depth in his performance, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. Julia Roberts pulled him aside during a break. Tom, what happened? You look like you've been through something profound. I learned something about my past that explained a lot about my present. Tom replied, I can't talk about it yet, but it's actually given me peace. The scenes Tom filmed in the week after returning from Sacramento were some of the best of his career. There was a rawness and emotional honesty that came from finally understanding the source of pain he'd carried his whole life without knowing it. Tom made a decision about Eleanor that honored his mother's sacrifice. Tom visited Eleanor one more time before she passed away 6 months later. He thanked her for her courage in telling him the truth, and he made a donation to establish the Eleanor Reyes Children's Protection Fund, which provides support to social workers dealing with child abuse cases. Mrs. Reyes, you and my mother both protected me in different ways. I want to make sure other children have that same protection. Eleanor smiled. Your mother would be so proud of the man you became despite everything. And Mr. Hanks, your father may have hurt you, but he didn't break you. You chose to be better than him. The impact of learning the truth transformed Tom's approach to his work. Larry Crowne was released to critical acclaim, with many reviewers noting the unusual emotional depth in Tom's performance. But more importantly, Tom began choosing roles that allowed him to explore themes of healing, forgiveness, and the power of protective love. He also became a quiet advocate for child protection services, using his influence to support legislation that strengthened social worker programs and improved investigation of child abuse cases. Years later, Tom reflected on how learning the truth set him free. In a rare interview about his personal life, Tom said, I spent 50 years unconsciously trying to be a better father than the one I thought I had. Learning what really happened made me realize I'd already succeeded. My mother's love and sacrifice gave me the foundation to become the parent and person I wanted to be. The letter that stopped everything ultimately gave Tom everything. Today, Tom credits that difficult weekend in Sacramento with helping him understand why family has always been so important to him, why he's drawn to stories about redemption and healing, and why he spent his career trying to bring comfort to people who might be carrying their own hidden pain. The truth about his childhood didn't break Tom Hanks. It completed him. It explained the source of the empathy that has made him America's most beloved actor and showed him that sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting someone from a truth they're not ready to handle. That's the Tom Hanks story about how confronting his darkest secret gave him his greatest strength.